What are the criteria if a thing we make is wise or unwise? Matter of fact. What are the criteria to judge a person wise in the first place? Hi everyone, I'm Tammy Becker. Thanks for joining me today. This is what we're going to talk about in our Bible discussion as we cover the topic in today's book of Proverbs, where a group of wise thoughts from God can help us in times of uncertainty. About the book of Proverbs in the Bible, the books before have had many discussions about God's promises to the people of Israel. The books of the Torah laid out the foundation of God's covenant laws to the people of Israel. The books of history pointed out the problem of the people of Israel to observe these laws. But for this section, the discussion is on the book of poetry. They're called poetry because the structural design of these poems showcase strong imagery. The strong imagery in these poems was made to describe the different themes that people of Israel had observed about God's wisdom in the commandments. This is also why the books of poetry are also called the books of wisdom. For this reason, the main Israel timeline of historical events has been put aside to highlight these themes. So these themes about God's wisdom include important topics like the book of Job, which discussed wisdom of God and why bad things can happen to good people. And then in the book of Psalms, we discuss the wisdom of God and why praise and worship matters. And the book of Proverbs, which is the topic for today, discusses the wisdom of God and why the best advice is that of instruction. Now, the book of Proverbs is the third book overall in the series of the poetry/wisdom books, and it's the 20th book overall in the Old Testament. About the author of the book of Proverbs, well, if the greatest number of psalms about God were written by King David, most of them, if not all of them, of Proverbs about God were written by King Solomon. So in fact, for this book, Solomon was known as the writer or the collector when it came to Proverbs. Solomon in total had about 3,000 Proverbs and 1,005 songs along the modern compilation of the Proverbs. So we only have around 350 compiled in the Bible, and it's fairly understandable to make sense on why King Solomon was able to write or collect most of these. Since these proverbs were things that were often said and then written down, it's taken by scholars as things that happened in Jerusalem, particularly the things that happened in the court of King Solomon. Here's something we take from 1 Kings chapter 4, verses 32 to 34 that talked about this. He spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs numbered 1,005. He spoke about plant life from the cedar of Lebanon to the hyssop that grows out of the walls. He also spoke about animals and birds, reptiles and fish from all nations. People come to listen to Solomon's wisdom, sent out by all the kings of the world who had heard this wisdom. No surprise, God's gift to Solomon was that he was known as the wisest man to the Israelites. About the book title of Proverbs, the book of Proverbs has also been known as the book of wisdom. Of course, each one of these books of poetry has been tagged under books of wisdom, mostly because each one of these books describes the different aspects of the wisdom of God. But the book of Proverbs normally falls into what people usually understand as wise advice. A proverb, after all, is a wise saying that can help us decide what is the best thing that we can do. So the question is, what makes up a wise saying when it comes to God? All right, the main people we'll discuss in this book. As with Psalms, there's not a specific mention of any main person to discuss in this book of Proverbs. Psalms has David mostly, who had written the Psalms to worship God, and you can argue that this book of Proverbs has Solomon, since he has taken since he is taken as the writer. But it's God's wisdom that shines in the lives of different people that is the main importance here. So getting on to the general outline of the book of Proverbs, though there's probably not a definite structure to read the book of Proverbs, most commentators prefer a structure, and often they categorize Proverbs into chapters with specific themes. For example, in chapters 1 through 9, it highlights the mission of the book of Proverbs, which deals with the differences between what is wisdom and what is folly. So in chapters 10 to 29, the highlight is an analogy of various proverbs that talk about problems we will have in our life. And in chapters 30 to 31, most commentators highlight these set of proverbs as an endpoint to the book. For example, Proverbs 1, Purpose and Theme. The Proverbs of Solomon, Song of David, King of Israel, for gaining wisdom and instruction, for understanding words of insight, for receiving instruction in prudent behavior, doing what is right and just and fair, for giving prudence to those who are simple, knowledge and discretion to the young. Let the wise listen and add to their learning, and let the discerning get guidance. For understanding proverbs and parables, the sayings and riddles of the wise. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. And here in the prologue, we see the exhortations to embrace wisdom, warning against the invitation of sinful men. Listen, my son, to your father's instructions, and do not forsake your mother's teaching. They are garland to grace your head and chain to adorn your neck. My son, if sinful men entice you, do not give in to them. If they say, come along with us, let's lie in wait for innocent blood. Let ambush some harmless soul. Let's swallow them alive like the grave, and whole like those who go down to the pit. We will get all sorts of valuable things and fill our houses with plunder. Cast lots with us. We will all share the loot. My son, do not go along with them. Do not set foot on their paths, for their feet rush into evil. They are swift to shed blood. How useless to spread a net where every bird can see it. These men lie in wait for their own blood. They ambush only themselves. Such are the paths of all who go after ill-gotten gain. It takes away the life of those who get it. Wisdom's rebuke. Out in the open, wisdom calls aloud. She raises her voice in the public square. On top of the wall, she cries out. At the city gate, she makes her speech. How long will you who are simple love your simple ways? How long will mockers delight in mockery and fools hate knowledge? Repent at my rebuke. Then I will pour out my thoughts to you. I will make known to you my teachings. But since you refuse to listen when I call, and no one pays attention when I stretch out my hand, since you disregard all my advice and do not accept my rebuke, I in turn will laugh when disaster strikes you. I will mock when calamity overtakes you. When calamity overtakes you like a storm, when disaster sweeps over you like a whirlwind, when distress and trouble overwhelm you, then they will call to me, but I will not answer. They will look for me, but will not find me. since they hated knowledge and did not choose to fear the Lord. Since they would not accept my advice and spurned my rebuke, they will eat of the fruit of their ways and be filled with the fruit of their schemes. For the waywardness of the simple will kill them, and the complacity of fools will destroy them. But whoever listens to me will live in safety and be at ease without fear of them. Proverbs 1 offers us an important message to what the whole book of Proverbs is about. The first and foremost, it's instructions about God's wisdom and to use that instruction in daily life. And that second, it's a warning to the youth so that they may not cut off the ties of righteousness. Now, Solomon writes of God's wisdom here like a father would instruct their child, that we, as all who read the book of Proverbs, are young people that are encouraged to think about God's wisdom in the world, and we have been warned against the temptation to foolishness and sinful choices. And you will find these descriptions, parenthood and childhood, in the various early Proverbs. Like this advice in Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 to 6, which applies to both the parent and the child. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not unto your understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. Now in verses 5 and 6 in particularly, it says that the trust in God will bring wisdom to the choices that we make. Proverbs 10 also has this to say about a young child. The Proverbs of Solomon. A wise son brings joy to his father, but a foolish son brings grief to his mother. Ill-gotten treasures have no lasting value, but righteousness delivers from death. The Lord does not let the righteous go hungry, but he thwarts the craving of the wicked. Lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. He who gathers crops in the summer is a prudent son, but he who sleeps during the harvest is a disgraceful son. Blessings crown the head of the righteous, but violence overwhelms the mouth of the wicked. The name of the righteous is used in blessings, but the name of the wicked will not rot. The wise in heart accept commands, but a chattering fool comes to ruin. Whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but whoever takes crooked paths will be found out. Whoever winks maliciously causes grief, and a chattering fool comes to ruin. The mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life, but the mouth of the wicked conceals violence. Hatred strips and stirs up conflict, but love covers over all wrongs. Wisdom is found on the lips of the discerning, but a rod is for the back of one who has no sense. The wise store up knowledge, but the mouth of the fool invites ruin. The wealth of the rich is their fortified city, but poverty is the ruin of the poor. The wages of righteous is life, but the earnings of the wicked are sin and death. Whoever heeds discipline shows the way to life, but whoever ignores correction leads others astray. Whoever conceals hatred with lying lips and spreads slander is a fool. Sin is not ended by multiplying words, but the prudent hold their tongues. The tongue of the righteous is choice silver, but the heart of the wicked is of little value. The lips of the righteous nourish many, but fools die for lack of sense. The blessing of the Lord brings wealth without paying toil for it. A fool finds pleasure in wicked schemes, but a person of understanding delights in wisdom. What the wicked dread will overtake them. What the righteous desire will be granted. When the storm has swept, the wicked are gone, but the righteous stand firm forever. As vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eye, so are sluggards to those who send them. The fear of the Lord adds length to the life, but the years of the wicked are cut short. The prospect of righteous is joy, but the hopes of the wicked come to nothing. The ways of the Lord is a refuge for the blameless, but is the ruin of those who do evil. The righteous will never be uprooted, but the wicked will not remain in the land. From the mouth of the righteous comes the fruits of wisdom, but a perverse tongue will be silenced. The lips of the righteous know what finds favor, but the mouth of the wicked only what is perverse. But the mouth of the wicked only what is perverse. There is a mention here that if a child would observe the wisdom of the Proverbs in their lives, the parents would have happiness. But the Proverbs also emphasized to both parent and child on the observation of other people's needs. Like in Proverbs 14, verse 21, it says, "It is a sin to despise one's neighbor, but blessed is the one who is kind to the needy." And it's here in verse 21 among many verses which encourages us to be kind and generous with those in need. Aside from those who need help, there is also important advice about friendship, such as in Proverbs 17:17. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for a time of adversity. Now, over in verse 17 in particular, it shows that the observation of the Proverbs can help us to have friendships strong enough to build a family. I don't know about you, but I have friends that I've had since I was in high school. And we all know I'm older, so some of them have been my friend for 40-something years, so it's amazing, and I love that. So then we skip into Proverbs 20:11. Even small children are known by their actions, so is their conduct really pure and upright. So verse 11 tells that the people of all ages, even children, should be careful about how they act. Why shouldn't we pound that into our children's heads? And then Proverbs 22:9, the generous will themselves be blessed, for they share their food with the poor. One of the things we do at U Ministries is get out in the community and we serve the poor, and we give Bibles to the people in need, along with food, clothing, and any other necessities they need. In verse 9 helps us to put in memory that the good of others is also good for us. Proverbs 24 verses 30 through 34. I went past the field of a sluggard, past the vineyard of someone who has no sense. Thorns had come up everywhere, the ground was covered with weeds, and the stone wall was in ruins. I applied my heart to what I observed and learned a lesson from what I saw. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come on you like a thief, and scarcity like an armed man. I love that. In verses 30 to 34, for example, this warned against the problem of being lazy. And the chapters continue with further sets of advice. So, I hope that you will dig in to this book, because there's so many good things in there for anything that you're feeling or going through. And there's some kind of instruction overall in this whole manual that was made into chapters, and it's for good reason. The Proverbs are like the Psalms, where you can use the word of David and others to praise, worship, and appeal to God. What appeals to the people in the Psalms is that no matter our backgrounds, we all look to God for the highest standard. But the Proverbs are wisdom from God and observed in the lives of many people. We all observe the same laws, for example, or we should, but we each have different scenarios by which these laws have been tested in our lives. No different than a father that had taught a child some house rules and that the child has to observe these once they get out of the house. As such, take a proverb a day at a time and observe that in your day. Here are some important topics that the book of Proverbs has wisdom on, and see if you can observe some of these proverbs in your life today. So these are special topics in the book of Proverbs that you can go to, and you might want to stop it here or note what time it is so that you can write these down and reference them later. So on fear of the Lord, you're going to find Proverbs chapter 9, verse 10. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. Proverbs 14, verse 16. A wise man fears the Lord and shuns evil, but a fool is hot-headed and reckless. Proverbs 14, verse 26. He who fears the Lord has a secure fortress, and for his children it will be a refuge. Now, on anger, these are the ones for anger. Write that down. Proverbs 22, verse 24 and 25. Do not make friends with a hot-tempered man. Do not associate with one easily angered, or you may learn his ways and get yourself ensnared. Proverbs 29:11. A fool gives full vent to his anger, but a wise man keeps himself under control. In Proverbs 29:22, an angry man stirs up discussion, and a hot-tempered one commits many sins. Now we're going to talk about some of the scriptures on money. In Proverbs 22, verse 4, we read, do not wear yourself out to get rich. Have the wisdom to show restraint. Proverbs 23:5, cash but a glance at riches, as they are gone, for they will surely sprout wings and fly off to the sky like an eagle. And in Proverbs 28, verse 27, he who gives to the poor will lack nothing, but he who closes his eyes to them receives many curses. Now on words, we are going to go to Proverbs 12, verse 18. Reckless words pierce like a sword, but the tongue of the wise bring healing. And then in Proverbs 15, verse 1, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. And in Proverbs 16, verse 24, pleasant words are a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones. And then we're going to skip on to wisdom now, and we're going to find in Proverbs 2, verse 6, for the Lord gives wisdom, and from his mouth comes knowledge and understanding. Proverbs 16, verse 16, how much better to get wisdom than gold, to choose understanding rather than silver. Proverbs 24, verse 5, a wise man has great power, and a man of knowledge increases strength. And then here's a few verses for you on honesty. Proverbs 12, verses 19, truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue lasts only a moment. In Proverbs 12, verse 22, the Lord detests lying lips, but he delights in men who are truthful. And in Proverbs 16:13, kings take pleasure in honest lips. They value a man who speaks the truth. Oh, and then we're going to talk about foolishness in the chapters. And that would be Proverbs 1, verse 7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but the fools despise wisdom and discipline. And then in Proverbs 10, verse 1, a wise son brings joy to his father, but a foolish son grief to his mother. And then in Proverbs 12, verses 15, The way of a fool seems right on, but a wise man listens to advice. Okay, let's talk about patience in the chapters. Proverbs 15, verse 18, a hot-tempered man stirs up dissension, but a patient man calms a quarrel. And in Proverbs 16, verse 32, better a patient man than a warrior, a man who controls his temper than one who takes a city. And in Proverbs 25, verse 15, through patience a ruler can be persuaded, and a gentle tongue can break a bone. I hope you enjoyed those. So we took a deep dive into Proverbs, and I hope that I brought out some of the most things that I could that would be relevant in our life today with the verses and whatnot, because there's so much in there. So I ask you to get a deep dive. Put in the comments if you would like an email sent with all those scriptures. I'll be glad to do that for you. But there's no doubt that wisdom was in this book. And like Psalms, it contained certain contexts, especially in the case of Solomon, in a dream. God asked Solomon, "Why shall I give you?" When Solomon answered, he asked for wisdom, which pleased God. Why had this choice pleased God? Well, probably because for this reason is to lay out is that it was the wisdom of Solomon, so that we could study this and observe it and get to know what God has for us. So in other words, the wisdom of God, it was about the knowledge of what mattered compared to things that hardly mattered, if at all. And you can see why this is so important. You can imagine that when given the question that Solomon was given, most rulers and probably some people would have asked for all sorts of other those besides the wisdom of God. Like they would ask for wealth or for fame or for glory or romance even. But those wishes would have been for the wrong reasons. But Solomon asked for the right reasons and wanted the right things according to God. So I'm going to leave you with this right here. And I hope that you enjoyed this, and I hope you dive into these books even deeper and find some things. Ask God to reveal to you what they mean to you and to show you how you can put them in your life and take them forward and share them with others. I hope you had a good time. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit my bell. Visit us on the web at www.youministries.com. And don't forget to check out our private Facebook group, Girl Read Your Bible, where we study the Bible together. And make sure to get back here next Wednesday for when our next episode drops. And I will see you next time. It's Tammy Becker. Bye.